Discover 10 incredible Stoic secrets that transform your life. Move boldly, hidden gems exposed. Sarah adjusted the straps of her scrubs, the weight of her long shift still anchoring her. The grocery store loomed ahead like a battlefield. With each step, whispers brushed against her ears: staff shortages, pay cuts. How could those phrases cut deeper than the exhaustion in her bones? She pushed her cart down the fluorescent-lit aisle, as if the bustling patrons could see beyond her sterile uniform to the weariness that painted her movements. At 38, she was a full-time nurse, a single mom battling the emotional tides of raising two teenagers, Jamie and Ethan. Every day bled into the next as financial worries loomed like dark clouds. Shouldering the burden of her job, Sarah felt lost, unnoticed. Did her colleagues understand the sacrifices? Or had they relegated her to the background, like a warning sign that had long ceased to be relevant? Her ambition for advancement felt more like a fantasy nowadays, a dream overshadowed by the realities of her children's lives. Jamie struggled with school, while Ethan nursed a heartbreak that even his mother couldn't console. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, jolting her from the swirling thoughts. It was a notification about a promotion coming available at the hospital, another chance for her to reach out for stability. But the thought sent adrenaline coursing through her veins alongside a pang of doubt. Would the increase in responsibility drown her? Could she risk her dreams while balancing the tumult of her household? She felt trapped between a crescendo of hope and an undertow of despair. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Later that evening, Sarah returned home to silence. The laughter that once echoed through the hallways now felt like a distant memory. She sat at the dinner table, her heart heavy. On a whim, she revisited her late grandmother's attic, searching for solace or a shred of inspiration. Inside a dusty chest, she unearthed a weathered journal, her great-grandfather's, filled with Stoic philosophies that sparked something in her. Could these ancient lessons be the thread that weaved through the fraying fabric of her life? But as she delved deeper into the writings, she also felt shadows creeping from every corner. The tension at work escalated. Rumors launched by a jealous coworker sowed seeds of insecurity. Should she retaliate and risk everything she worked for? Or rise above the noise? Jamie's pain and Ethan's pressures merged with her own, and the weight of expectation felt unbearable. A scream resonated within her, one that begged to be acknowledged. Did her children need her strength, or did they expect her to be vulnerable? Questions collided. Was her ambition tearing them apart? The doorbell cut through her anxious thoughts, a sharp reminder of reality's unpredictability. Who was there, and could they unravel her already fragile world? The silence thickened, the air heavy, as Sarah braced herself for what awaited her at the door. The door creaked open slowly, revealing her old mentor, Sarah's former nursing instructor, Mrs. Langdon. The familiar presence was a beacon of warmth in Sarah's stormy world. "Sarah. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by," she said, her voice rich with genuine concern. "Hi, Mrs. Langdon," Sarah replied, masking surprise with a polite smile. She stepped aside, allowing her mentor to enter, but her heart raced. Her mind was still caught up in the turmoil of her own life, the swirling doubts and fears. As they settled in the living room, Mrs. Langdon's keen eyes picked up on Sarah's unease. "You look tired, dear. Is everything all right?" Sarah hesitated, words caught somewhere between her throat and her heart. Instead of her usual deflection, something deep urged her to reveal her struggles. "Honestly? It's been overwhelming recently. Work's chaotic, and my kids need more from me than I know how to give." Mrs. Langdon nodded, a soft frown pulling at her face. "But you've always risen to the challenges laid before you. Remember your journey through nursing school? You faced obstacles head-on." "I know, but it feels different this time." "The promotion opportunity at work, it terrifies me," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling at the admission. "What if I fail?" What if I can't handle it and let everyone down, especially my kids? A pause enveloped the room as Mrs. Langdon considered her words. It's easy to let fear dictate your choices. But think about what failure really means. What you perceive as failure could actually be a step toward growth. Flashes of her great-grandfather's journal danced in Sarah's mind. I found it in the attic. A treasure, really, filled with Stoic principles. They speak about control, about how strength lies in action, not in fear. But, it's hard to internalize that when life feels like it's spiraling. Mrs. Langdon leaned closer, intensity in her gaze. The Stoics knew something profound. They understood that we can't control what others think or say. What you can control is your response. If now is the time to advance, don't let your insecurities rob you of that chance. It's not just about me, though. What if I'm not enough for my children if I take on more responsibilities? Sarah's voice cracked, vulnerability spilling over. Strength and vulnerability can coexist. Your children need to see you chase opportunities. It's important for them to witness resilience in action. Don't underestimate the example you set. They might follow. Sarah considered this. In glimpsing her potential, could she illuminate a path for Jamie and Ethan? Her decisions might resonate beyond just her own fears. The conversation stirred something inside her, a latent strength ready to emerge. Discovering her great-grandfather's philosophies had been serendipitous, but this dialogue with Mrs. Langdon illuminated a path forward her fears could morph into fuel instead of chains. I'll think about what you've said, Sarah finally replied, her voice steadier now. Maybe I need to confront my doubts instead of allowing them to steer my choices. As they wrapped up their conversation, another thought bubbled to the surface. While she contemplated taking that step forward at work, could she find a way to support her children's emotional needs as well? It wouldn't be easy, and the path remained clouded, but she sensed a flicker of optimism beginning to light the way. As Mrs. Langdon left and the door closed behind her, Sarah's heart raced with questions and possibilities. The bump of uncertainty still lingered, but it now walked hand in hand with a burgeoning determination. And so, she sat down in her living room, the journal beside her, armed with Stoic lessons. But was she truly ready to embrace what lay beyond her comfort zone? The scent of potential filled the air as she opened the ancient pages once more, searching for guidance. She sensed the time had come to face both her inner demons and the challenges outside. With every word she read, it felt like she was on the precipice of change, and the unsettling anticipation ignited something bubbling within. What would she uncover next, and how would it empower her in ways she couldn't yet fathom? Sarah leaned closer to her great-grandfather's journal, the faint scent of aged paper filling her nostrils like the breath of wisdom waiting to be revealed. Each page crackled with potential. As she flipped through the lines, searching for an anchor amidst her turbulent thoughts, the words leaped off the page, igniting a quiet but profound determination within her. The principles of Stoicism echoed loudly in her mind. Control what you can control, one passage emphasized. It felt nearly imperative now, a mantra she could repeat to herself in times of doubt. Taking a deep breath, she allowed the weight of those words to settle on her. The responsibility for her own growth lay within her grasp, not somewhere in the chaotic realms of work and motherhood. But how would she take that first step? Discussing her fears with Mrs. Langdon had somehow stripped away some of their power. If failure was a pathway to growth, then maybe, just maybe, it didn't hold the terrifying sway she had attributed to it. She recalled her instructor's words about exposing her children to resilience, how that simple act could resonate loudly and brightly in their lives. Yet, clarity was still obscured by uncertainty. A part of her recoiled at the thought of moving forward, fearing the repercussions it might have on her children, their emotional needs looming as a heavy cloud in the back of her mind. What did success mean if her home life began to falter? She needed to design a strategy, a plan, to navigate both her professional aspirations and her children's well-being. With renewed purpose, she pulled out a notebook, the blank pages a canvas for her thoughts. She began to list down not only what she wanted to achieve at work, but how she would balance that with being the mother her children deserved. How could she show them that perseverance came with setbacks? She wrote, "Create a family meeting every Sunday. That would allow her to check in on Jamie and Ethan, to hear their concerns and dreams, and to celebrate both failures and successes together. Ideas flowed as she brainstormed, her pen dancing across the paper. Introduce open-ended conversations, share my stories of fear and resilience, and involve them in my decision-making process. It felt liberating to envision a familial structure infused with openness. For the first time, Sarah felt as though she might be able to harmonize her professional ambitions with her responsibilities as a mother. Yet, doubt still clawed at the edges of her excitement. Her mind spiraled. What if she didn't execute her plans well? What if her attempts at being open failed? Would it weaken their bond instead of strengthening it? Each question hovered, challenging her revised perspective. She had internalized her past failures like chains. What if forging a new path only left her shackled again? Finishing her thoughts, she took a deep breath and repeated the crucial lesson that had resonated with her: she could only control her actions, not the outcome. If she approached her responsibilities with intention and vulnerability, perhaps she could indeed steer her family towards resilience. It was time to act with boldness, yet every action required courage. Sarah stood up and headed toward the mirror, staring at her reflection, a mother filled with uncertainty but also potential. The reflection stared back, urging her to move. If she reconciled her ambitions with her children's needs, she might not just grow professionally, but personally. What if this became a turning point for all of them? Determined, she sat back down, finally deciding to draft an email to her manager about the promotion. In an impulsive moment, she clicked send before any self-doubt could hold her back. But immediately afterward, a pang of anxiety shot through her. What consequences would come next? As her heart raced, her fingers hovered over the keys once more. Now it seemed the time for action was beginning to collide with deeper trepidation. And so, she leaned back in her chair, caught between the thrill of ambition and the shadows of her fears. Had her email propelled her toward opportunity, or had it opened the door to unforeseen challenges? The moment of truth loomed ahead. What would she confront next in this unpredictable journey? The days following her impulsive email were a mix of anticipation and quiet desperation. Sarah found herself double-checking her inbox obsessively, each chime of the notification bar sending a ripple of anxiety through her body. Her mind swirled with potential outcomes, each more daunting than the last. What if her manager dismissed her? What if her colleagues questioned her credibility? The very thought nestled uncomfortably in her throat. At home, Jamie and Ethan had begun to sense her unease. Their nightly routines became peppered with questions that caught her off guard. "Mom, are you okay?" Jamie had asked after noticing the glazed expression on her face as she scrolled through work emails. His concern was innocent yet profound, echoing in her mind a question she couldn't quite answer. Was she okay? To stabilize her own emotions, Sarah returned to the journal. It did become a sanctuary of sorts, resonating with the echoes of her great-grandfather's thoughts. She turned back to familiar passages. Embrace adversity as a forge for your spirit. Each word unfurled within, rekindling the flame of determination that had prompted her to reach for the promotion in the first place. She found herself pondering the lessons of resilience her children needed more than just a mother. They needed a role model who embodied strength in the face of uncertainty, someone who walked boldly through the messiness of life's challenges. The truth struck her: it wasn't merely about securing a promotion, it was about teaching her children that ambition coexisted with risk. Deciding to put her plans into action, Sarah gathered the kids one Sunday afternoon for their first family meeting. The atmosphere was tinged with excitement yet thick with the lingering doubt she had not quite shed. She arranged the living room comfortably, soft pillows dotted around the floor like stepping stones in their discussion. "Guys," she began, her voice steadying despite her internal chaos, "I want to talk about something that matters to me and to us." As she spoke, she laid out her thoughts, detailing her aspirations while revealing her uncertainties about work and family. The truth poured out like a waterfall. "Sometimes, I worry about not being there for you while trying to be successful at my job." Ethan's brows knitted together in confusion. "Does that mean you won't have time for us?" "No, it means I need to learn how to balance both," she countered, taking a breath. "And I want your help to do that. I want to hear your thoughts, your fears, and celebrate our wins together." As they spoke, the nature of the conversation transformed. Their fears were articulated through giggles and raised eyebrows rather than silence. Jamie shared his worry about failing a test. Ethan explained how hard it felt when he couldn't connect with his teammates during soccer. For the first time, Sarah saw them wrestling with fears similar to hers. The conversation deepened, evolving into unexpected territory. As they navigated their own fears together, Sarah knew she was not just trying to forge a path for herself but also guiding them in building their resilience. It dawned on her that her vulnerabilities as a mother were as important as her successes. But even in this uplifting moment, a shadow loomed. The doubts returned like whispers, the stakes holding strong beneath her thoughts. After the meeting, Sarah found herself wondering about the email again. Would her manager respond with support or skepticism? What if she had recklessly put her career on the line? As the day faded into evening, she picked up her phone. She hesitated, fingers hovering, the weight of uncertainty pulling at her decision-making. Would reaching out again show commitment, or did it suggest weakness? In this tense moment, Sarah confronted the hardest lesson yet. Navigating ambition was less about avoiding risk and more about choosing to act in spite of fear. She vowed to anchor her decisions in the hopes she had shared with her children. As she hovered over her email, ready to make contact with her manager once more, another notification chimed. A new email received. Her heart raced. What would it reveal? As her pulse quickened, Sarah opened the new email. The subject line, from her manager, brimming with promise, sent a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Before she could second-guess herself, she clicked open the message, her heart drumming a frenetic rhythm. Each word she read seemed to carry the weight of her future. Hi Sarah, thank you for your email. I appreciate your initiative and desire for growth within your role. The remainder of the email blared like an alarm in her ears, both exhilarating and terrifying. Her manager expressed enthusiasm about her ambitions but suggested a formal meeting to discuss her proposal further. It felt like an invitation to step onto a stage, spotlighted and scrutinized. In that moment, wave after wave of uncertainty washed over her. What if she faltered? What if she wasn't ready? The implications of success loomed large, as did the specter of failure. As she closed the email, the reality settled heavily over her. This was her chance, a fraction of her desire for those professional heights, but it also meant shedding the safety net she had so carefully woven. Sarah felt her thoughts spiraling. What if they questioned her commitment? What if all her fears were valid? Layoffs, criticism from colleagues, and a resounding no echoing in her mind. But then came the flicker of resolve. Yes, this path was fraught with peril, but what growth lay in staying within her comfort zone? This was a moment for action rather than retreat, a chance to forge ahead and claim what she believed was possible. The memory of her family meeting rekindled the spark within her. The conversations about fear and ambition with Jamie and Ethan had opened her eyes. They had risked sharing their vulnerabilities, and here she was, standing at the brink of her own. Strength no longer felt solitary, it was collective, shared among those she loved. Over the next few days, Sarah prepared for the meeting in meticulous detail. She mapped a plan that laid out her vision, backed by data and her own insights from years of experience. But with every revision, an undercurrent of self-doubt tried to derail her. Was her plan thorough enough? Did it resonate with the company ethos? Each question became a barrier to her confidence, perpetuating the cycle of overthinking that had plagued her for years. Determined to break the cycle, she started journaling again, reframing her thoughts. Instead of dwelling on what-if scenarios, she would write affirmations: I am prepared. I am capable. I deserve this opportunity. Each word she penned morphed her anxiety into determination, turning her vulnerabilities into strengths she never knew she possessed. The night before the meeting, Sarah found herself awake, pacing. A part of her wanted to cancel, to shy away from the vulnerability of exposure, but another part of burgeoning resolve pushed her to seek the conversation. The risk was tangible, but so was the potential for growth. Rather than brushing the energy aside, she embraced it, recognizing this overwhelm as a sign of her stepping into her power. On the morning of the meeting, Sarah dressed deliberately. Each piece of clothing felt like armor. When she arrived, the conference room bore witness to her clashing emotions, anticipation and dread mingling in a tense dance. Her manager already awaited her, smiling, offering encouragement. "Ready?" they asked. Seeking a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself and nodded. "Absolutely." As she stepped forward, she realized that the moment could decide the path ahead, but more importantly, it was an opportunity to silence the fears that had dictated her life for too long. Would she rise to the occasion or retreat into the shadows of self-doubt? With her heart racing and thoughts colliding, the door to the room closed behind her. Everything hung in the balance as she prepared to unveil the professional she had slowly become, revealing the depths of her ambition. What would she choose in that moment of reckoning? That fundamental question resonated within, setting the stage for what could only be a pivotal exchange, both professionally and personally. The moment felt suspended in time as Sarah stood in front of her manager, the room filled with an electrifying expectation. The polished wood of the conference table gleamed under the fluorescent lighting, mirroring the tension in her chest. This was not just a professional meeting, it was a turning point in her life. She took a deep breath, focusing her attention on the charts and notes she had prepared, her mind racing with the weight of each detail. "Thanks for meeting with me today," she began, her voice steady despite the storm swirling within. "I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm excited to discuss how my proposal aligns with our strategic goals." As she spoke, she watched her manager's expression, searching for signs of engagement, interest, or doubt. The pauses felt agonizing, each split second dragging like an eternity. Her manager nodded, a flicker of interest sparking in their eyes. "I was impressed with your initiative, Sarah. Let us dive into your proposal." The words were the green light she desperately needed. As she launched into her presentation, she meticulously explained her vision, highlighting how her ideas could enhance efficiency and foster innovation within the team. Sarah's heart swelled with adrenaline. This was what she had worked for and what she believed in. Yet, halfway through her presentation, a thought flickered: was she really making an impact? She felt the insidious emergence of doubt creeping in, clawing at her confidence. What if they didn't see the value? What if her ideas were not enough? For a split second, her voice wavered, and a wave of nausea threatened to consume her. "I believe these changes could drive significant improvements," she continued, trying to drown out her insecurities. "By implementing this approach, we can, however," her manager interjected, "you mentioned a few risks regarding resistance from current team members. How do you plan to address that?" That question hit her like a bolt of lightning, and Sarah paused. This was more than merely defending her proposal, it was a call to confront her deepest fears: rejection and confrontation. She had anticipated questions about logistics and support, but this was about her role as a leader and an advocate for change. She stammered, sliding into an internal debate. The answer required more than data, it required vulnerability, honesty about her own experiences with fear. "I understand that change can be daunting. In my experience, embracing new ideas often leads to pushback, but evolving communication strategies and fostering an open dialogue can help mitigate that resistance. It's essential to create an environment where everyone feels heard." There was a moment of silence as her manager considered her response. Sarah felt a mix of triumph and terror. She had revealed a piece of herself while standing her ground professionally. As the discussion moved forward, she found her footing more firmly, engaging her manager in a dialogue rather than a presentation. They began to critique and refine her ideas together, and with each exchange, Sarah felt her initial fears start to dissipate. Questions morphed into brainstorming sessions. Challenges turned into opportunities. The very act of being present and articulating her thoughts transformed her experience. The meeting was evolving from a simple presentation into a collaborative effort. As they wrapped up, her manager smiled, "I'm impressed with your insights, Sarah. Let us work on refining this further. Your willingness to embrace challenges will serve you well as you continue to grow in this role." The praise was a balm to her insecurities, but it also sparked a new wave of questions. How could she keep this momentum? How could she translate this success into ongoing growth, both personally and professionally? As Sarah left the conference room, her mind raced with possibilities, but a small seed of anxiety remained. Could she sustain this newfound confidence in the face of ongoing challenges? Navigating her next step stirred a sense of urgency within her. Now was not the time to rest on her laurels. The reflection of her own ambition stared back at her, and the goal of transformation loomed ahead. As she returned to her desk, the question echoed in her mind, urging her forward. What more could she accomplish if she continued to push beyond her limits? The bustle of the office swirled around Sarah like a distant storm, but her thoughts were pinned to her next steps. She settled into her chair, the sleek fabric tugging at her as she leaned forward to surface her notes. The proposal might have gone well, but it was merely the beginning of a much broader journey. How did one turn a single triumph into a sustained streak of accomplishment? The words of her manager echoed in her mind. Embrace challenges. She had already faced her fears today, inviting constructive criticism rather than retreating in anxiety. It was now paramount to leverage this formative experience into her personal development, yet the uneasiness hunched her shoulders as the stakes felt suddenly enormous. Not only did she need to prove that her ideas had merit, but she had to demonstrate her capacity as a leader capable of navigating impending resistance. Determined, Sarah opened her laptop and created a new document titled Next Steps. She envisioned herself stepping into professional circles, engaging with her colleagues and expanding the framework of her proposal beyond the walls of her recent encounter. The alignment with strategic goals had been established, but now she must foster a communal atmosphere where her visions could take root. Ideas began to flow. Conducting informal workshops where her team could voice concerns felt essential. Workshops could also serve as a platform for Sarah to practice articulating her thoughts further and gaining feedback from an audience that would eventually be impacted by her strategies. She typed rapidly, the urgency propelling her fingers across the keyboard. Yet with each idea came the weight of an omnipresent haunting. What if the workshops fell flat? What if she misread her colleagues' needs? Planning would require more than mere ambition. It would call for painstaking attention to detail and an understanding of interpersonal dynamics. As she paused to gather her thoughts, the image of Olivia flashed before her. Olivia was another project lead, confident and magnetic. Her colleagues seemed to adore her, often leading discussions effortlessly, yet Sarah had witnessed the backstories to some of Olivia's successes that included confrontations with dissension and failed attempts at collaboration. Lessons learned from setbacks formed the backbone of Olivia's strength and subsequent engagement. Could I emulate that? Sarah questioned aloud, casting wary glances around the office. It felt so simplistic, so naive, to think she could transform her hesitance into magnetic poise overnight. Then her heart raced with determination. To follow in Olivia's footsteps, she needed to invest time understanding her own strengths deeply and recognizing her weaknesses. It wasn't enough to simply cultivate a team, she must also refine who she was as a contributor. Compelled, Sarah began drafting a plan that outlined potential workshops, targeting key elements of her proposal while intertwining personal anecdotes and scenarios where the team felt their fears were acknowledged. Her pulse quickened at the thought of open dialogues where bottlenecked ideas could merge into solutions. However, as she contemplated the next moves, an unsettling thought slithered through her mind. What would happen when she faced direct opposition? In a sea of expectations, unearthing dissent could unveil adversaries lurking, ready to challenge her authority. That echo of the unknown sent her heart into a frenzy. If she prompted discussions, would she also have to prepare for confrontation? What dignities might be sacrificed in the name of diplomacy? With her training wheels off, she realized the time had come to walk the tightrope of leadership, balancing assertiveness with approachability, diligence with resilience. A sudden rush of resolve surged within her. She would not avoid this journey into the storm. She would face it head-on. Whatever challenges presented themselves, she would be equipped, or if necessary, would learn to be equipped. This was not just about initiating change but heralding it boldly. Dismissing her fears, she focused on action. What could she declare in the next team meeting? Her pulse quickened with anticipation. How could she position her thoughts as both audacious yet inviting? She hit save on her document and leaned back in her chair, ready to set the stage for an evolution that demanded her to confront her very essence. The voice in her head whispered, the time had come to face her own potential. The morning sun streamed through the office windows, casting a warm hue on the polished desks. Sarah could hear the faint rustle of papers and the rhythmic click of keyboards, but her world had narrowed into a singular focus: the upcoming team meeting. She had prepared meticulously, crafting a framework that would intertwine her vision with the team's capabilities. It was time to fortify her commitment to lead. As colleagues filtered into the conference room, Sarah observed their demeanor. Some greeted her with friendly nods, while others immersed themselves in their devices, seemingly indifferent to her presence. The weight of anticipation pressed heavily on her chest. What if her efforts fell flat? What if they weren't ready for her ideas? The specter of doubt loomed larger as the seconds ticked by. She cleared her throat, palms slick with nervousness. Would they see this not simply as a proposal but as an opportunity to recalibrate their approach? She had to believe in the validity of her vision, but the realization struck her self-belief was just the first hurdle. She now stood on the precipice of an endeavor that demanded authenticity, vulnerability, and an openness to potential backlash. As the meeting commenced, she employed every ounce of training she had gathered from Olivia's strength. It felt like stepping into a role far more significant than just presenting. She educated her voice to resonate with confidence, carefully balancing clarity and warmth. I believe we can create a cohesive framework that evolves with our needs, she began, scanning the faces around the room for reactions. When she invited feedback, however, the responses were tepid. A few hesitant nods, whispered conversations masked under polite smiles, none of it truly resonated with the enthusiasm she had hoped for. The room teetered on the brink of engagement, but they were hesitant to leap into the collective conversation. That's when she sensed a familiar shadow creeping in fear of dissent. Let us address what might concern us, Sarah pressed, automatically positioning herself as a bridge between idea and implementation. What are the hurdles we might face? I'd like to hear what could hold us back. To her surprise, a hand shot up, the very one she had partially expected to be a critic, Mark, a more seasoned colleague well-versed in past failures. I think we have to discuss the resources. They might not support our timeline, and we need to understand how this impacts our existing commitments. His remark was raw and, while bordering on confrontation, carried valuable insight. Sarah felt the room shift, energy bouncing around like a ball caught in a game of ping-pong. Conversations sparked as colleagues began to weigh in, some in agreement, others countering opinions with innovative solutions. She felt exhilarated yet confronted. The dynamic she had longed to create was finally materializing, but so too was the challenge of navigating conflict. Let us break this down, Sarah proposed, channeling Olivia's assertiveness to transform the emerging tension into a constructive dialogue. What solutions can we propose? Her fingers danced over the document she had prepared, each suggestion echoed in her mind as she embraced the unfolding chaos. As the flow of discussion grew, Sarah began to uncover not only the needs of the team but also hidden competencies within herself. With each question raised, she realized her ability to pivot from presenting to facilitating. It was as if a curtain had lifted. Her role hadn't been about just pushing her ideas forward but also about learning to inspire a collective vision, inviting them into a shared strategy. Yet as the meeting came to a close, a nagging question lingered: could she maintain this momentum? Intimidating as some feedback had been, she recognized its worth. What other areas required the same approach? Was she genuinely ready to embrace ongoing dissent and criticism, even when it was uncomfortable? A thought pricked at her consciousness: if she could harness this energy now, what awaited her in the world beyond? This room? Perhaps the true test lay ahead, deeper than this initial engagement, a test of her resilience and perseverance against the challenges that awaited. With every nod of connection and every word of dissent, Sarah felt the tide shifting. Her journey had only just begun, and with it came the exhilarating promise of transformation. What awaited her and her team on this newly forged path? The horizon was full of potential and uncertainty. Was she ready to follow them into it? The days following the meeting unfolded in a whirlwind of heightened expectations and self-reflection. Sarah churned through her responsibilities, but an undercurrent of anxiety tugged at her. Had she truly captured the team's interest, or had she merely stoked flickers of discussion without igniting a lasting flame? As she locked eyes with colleagues across the office, she discerned a mixture of hope and hesitation mirrored in their expressions. It dawned on her that her recent efforts were merely the beginning of a much larger challenge. One afternoon, as the golden sunlight filtered through the glass, she overheard hushed tones from a nearby cubicle, snippets of discontent woven into their conversation about the meeting. The vulnerability she had showcased now felt risky, as if she had removed a layer of armor only to reveal soft underbelly that could be punctured. It unsettled her. Was she meant to be the architect of change but forced to work in shadows of distrust? That evening, as she sat on her couch, facing her array of scattered notes and timelines, she felt the itch of doubt pressing in again. She had envisioned transforming the team's culture, but what if her vision was misguided? Each list of to-dos seemed more like chains restricting her clarity rather than pathways to innovation. The fear crept closer, whispering the possibility of her vision being wholly rejected. But Sarah recognized a flicker of resolve. She reached for her journal, a newly sharpened pencil in hand, determined to document the insights that coursed through her mind. What if she could confront these misgivings head-on? What if, instead of fearing dissent, she could initiate it as a natural part of the design process? Transforming feedback into a powerful tool required a shift in her mindset. Embracing the friction of criticism could form the bedrock of this new foundation. The next day, Sarah entered the office armed with a plan. She approached Mark, who lingered near the break room. "Can we chat?" she asked, her tone earnest but confident. As they settled at the small table, she leaned in and spoke plainly. "What did you really think about the meeting? I want to hear your thoughts." To her surprise, Mark responded with candor, revealing layers of admiration mixed with skepticism. "You brought something fresh to the table, but there is apprehension around the feasibility," he acknowledged. "People want to believe in something tangible." Her mind raced. This was a pivotal moment. A conversation with one person had the power to reshape the dialogue around her leadership. Grateful for his honesty, she saw patterns emerge in his feedback: a desire for clarity, a sense of community and problem-solving. It clicked. Rather than shepherding ideas from a pedestal, she needed to install herself amongst her colleagues, engaging them at every level, soliciting their insights to sculpt strategies together. The realization that collaboration was the heartbeat of innovation washed over her. She invited Mark to help plan a workshop designed for deeper discussion, framing it as a space where everyone could generate ideas while addressing feasibility concerns. His eyes widened. She sensed her determination, encouraging him to step further into the light of his own potential. As the days rolled into planning modes, Sarah structured the upcoming sessions around two key themes: empowerment and vulnerability. Drawing on recent reflections, she was committed to ensuring that everyone, including herself, could voice concerns while taking ownership of solutions. This focus required a mindful approach, blending her newfound belief in collaboration with an urgent desire to engage her team personally. Yet, the journey was wrought with pressure. Reconnecting with the team would unveil not just their potential for unity but also their resistance to change. The prospect of leading these dialogues lit a flame in her core, pushing her to confront her insecurities head-on. With the first workshop nearing, Sarah stewed in anticipation and apprehension alike. Would participants engage genuinely, or would doubt cloud their interactions? Before her lay a crossroads: take the lead in embracing potential criticism and use it to propel this new vision, or shy away from the necessary discomfort. The clock ticked too slowly, and she felt the familiar weight of the moment pressing down on her. The stakes only intensified as she prepared to unveil her vision to the team in a setting that was as much about them as it was about her. Was she truly ready to take this leap and plunge into the depths of vulnerability? The truth beckoned, and as she took a deep breath, she knew the workshop could either crown her efforts or introduce further challenges. What awaited her after the first words were spoken? Uncertainty crackled in the air. Tomorrow would reveal everything. The workshop unfolded like an intricate dance, each movement poised between anticipation and uncertainty. As Sarah stepped into the room, she felt the weight of her vision rest upon her shoulders. Colleagues settled into their seats, whispers fading as a tangible silence fell over the space. This was her chance to bridge the divide sparked between vulnerability and leadership. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite her tumultuous thoughts. "Today, we're here not only to explore our project but to encourage open dialogue about how we can work better as a team." With that, Sarah launched into her agenda. She framed the discussion around camaraderie, inviting everyone to share their thoughts while also addressing previous apprehensions. She breathed in deeply, drawing strength from the Stoic principles that had guided her: control what you can control. As the discussion progressed, she noticed her colleagues slowly engaging.
Ideas flickered and sparked, meeting each other mid-air, weaving a tapestry of collaboration.
Mark contributed actively, reinforcing the themes she had pushed for and offering constructive opposition. The very air in the room shifted, it thrummed with a burgeoning sense of community. But the real test lay ahead. "Now, let us talk about our challenges," Sarah said, needing to pave the way for honest conversations.
"What concerns do you have regarding this new framework?"
A subtle ripple of tension ensued. She could sense the struggle to voice dissent looming in the background. But instead of closing down, she leaned into the discomfort, encouraging them. "We need truth to thrive. No idea is too small or too outlandish."
As the conversation deepened, varied perspectives emerged.
A colleague shared a concern about the timeline, while another stressed resource limitations. Sarah listened intently, allowing the voices to interlace with her own narrative of ambition and fear. It became clear that integrating priorities and cultivating trust was key to propelling the team forward.
For every dissenting opinion, she responded with genuine curiosity, unraveling solutions instead of conflicts.
When the session wrapped up, Sarah felt an intoxicating rush of achievement. Together, they had chipped away at the initial uncertainty, metamorphosing friction into a robust dialogue. As her colleagues exited, their expressions revealed something more than surprise. They were invested, hopeful, and ready to collaborate.
In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the office transformed dramatically.
Her colleagues were no longer spectators, they were stakeholders, engaged in discussions that flourished beyond her expectations. Her inbox flooded with messages, not marking criticism, but offering support, ideas, and an eagerness to get involved. Sarah basked in this newfound synergy, but deep within, doubts threatened to resurface.
Had this transformation truly set roots? Could she inspire the same momentum moving forward when faced with potential setbacks?
Doubts spiraled until she consciously paused, recalling Mrs. Langdon's words about strength. This was growth. With each step of vulnerability came opportunities for layered discussions, the ability to embrace both success and criticism as vital parts of her journey. Fueled by that realization, she decided to build upon this success by introducing monthly iterative feedback sessions. Not only would this prioritize work progress, but it would reinforce shared ownership, collaborative growth as a continuous journey rather than a destination. Amidst planning for the next workshop, she felt a deep swell of satisfaction. Sarah no longer felt like a silhouette in the background. She had initiated meaningful connections and visible changes both in herself and her team. Then, the moment came when she discovered that their proposal, one that melded her original ideas with the collective contributions, had been accepted by upper management. It was the recognition she had long craved, a tangible acknowledgement of her hard work and transformation.
How different her life had now become.
The before and now stood starkly apart. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, challenged the status quo, and brought her colleagues along for the ride. Reflecting on this journey from doubt to resolved leadership, Sarah felt an undeniable sense of pride. In finally embracing her ambition, she had not just achieved professional recognition, she'd modeled resilience for her children and reaffirmed her own identity. The whispers of fear had transformed into sparks of confidence. Perhaps the greatest achievement rested in how she, a once hesitant nurse, now wielded her leadership with a thoughtful blend of assertiveness and compassion. This journey had tested her but ultimately forged connections that would steer her career into uncharted territory. Underneath the surface of every challenge lay the possibility of growth and insight she'd carry forward, sharing it with Jamie and Ethan as they navigated challenges of their own. Life ebbed and flowed, but through each tide, she had found her anchor. Tomorrow awaited, ripe with potential, but today, Sarah claimed her journey's triumphant moment as solid confidence established, recognized competence validated, and a personal achievement realized beyond the constraints of apprehension. It was time to own her story. So now, to those experiencing their own personal journeys or facing similar challenges, let Sarah's transformation inspire your own leap into growth.
You need to subscribe now to follow more incredible stories of personal overcoming.
Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it will make a difference for engaging content.
Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and how you can relate it to your own life.
Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.
Don't wait even one more second to share.
Your support shapes this community of discovery and growth.